Few more pros I came up with though, and I think you
Yes.
might agree with this one is ideas, idea
Oh,
generation, like coming at like your mom telling you about her pattern ideas and you creating it.
welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
Today's topic is quilting with your mom and the kind of the mother-daughter relationship within the quilting world. Tori and I both share the quilting hobby and business with our mothers, so we kind of have a unique perspective. There are a few other well-known mother-daughter teams out there in the quilt world too. So we definitely know this is a legacy craft and that quilts become those family heirlooms. So you do have those common threads, as the saying goes, that weave through your family history. Tori, tell us a little bit about quilting with your mom and how the two of you share this hobby.
I am sixth generation quilter. However, I wasn't really interested in quilting for a long time. Well, I was in and out of it, I should say. I I was introduced to quilting when I was little, obviously. I was growing up around a bunch of quilts. My grandma sewed more clothes than quilts, but she did make us all baby blankets. And she had quilts from her sisters. She had several brothers and sisters, and they all, not all, but many of them quilted and gifted quilts to her. So whenever we go over to her house, and I say we a lot, especially talking about my childhood because I have a twin. So So me and my twin, we would go spend the night at my grandma's house and we would make our beds out of all these quilts and we would lay on the floor in different rooms or we would pick a quilt to go on the bed whenever we got to stay the night. So I grew up around a lot of quilts, but I didn't really get into quilting until I was a teenager. I made my first one though when I was 9 and my mom did not teach me. I like to say her teaching style and my learning style didn't mesh. So I was taught by a family friend. Her name is Harriet, and she was very patient with us, and she helped a lot with the cutting because we were 9. And she taught us how to make our first quilt. And actually, I believe it was a railroad block. It might have cows on it. It was so cute. It had these little cows in different directions, and it was red and green with cows. I had a cowboy themed bedroom at the time. I had like a cow skin little lamp. So it like went really good with my bedroom. I was really proud of that quilt, and Harriet was wonderful enough to finish it for us because I wasn't about to learn how to hand stitch with the needle. My 9-year-old hands, I couldn't have the strength or the coordination to really like bind. So she was anyway, she taught us how the basics on quilting, and then a few years later, I made my first quilt at home with a rag quilt. My mom was really into quilting at that time when I was around 12. It was a few years before she got her long arm, but my grandma had handed down a bunch of squares to her, a bunch of fabric. So she decided to do something with it and started quilting. So she got really into it. And I'm just watching her. And she, again, learning style, teaching style, didn't really mesh. She was kind of like, well, here's some squares and then put them together. So I figured out how to do a rag quilt with a little bit of direction from her. She was just like, do this. So I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. And I made a rag quilt. And that rag quilt was my first real quilt I did all by myself. Super proud of it. And then my mom got really into long arm quilting when she had made all these quilt tops and then was trying to find someone to quilt them for her because she couldn't get them through her, domestic machinery. They
Mm-hmm.
were huge polyester. Um, so they're heavy. Like so she was trying really hard to find someone to quilt them. So she bought her own long arm eventually when she came the cost adjustment and stuff, they decided, my parents, to get my mom a long arm. And it is a free motion long arm. There's no computer on it. And that's what she has zeroed in on. It's what she loves to do, is the long arming. So since then but I made my own quilts from a few patterns and books and YouTube. But as you all know, I am a military spouse, or you may not know, but I am a military spouse, and I moved to Georgia, and she's in California. So I didn't really get into quilting until I really moved and I had nothing to do. So I was kind of stuck in this crazy time where my entire life plan had been thrown out the window. My husband had asked and really wanted to join the army 2 weeks after we got married. So I know it's kind of going down a tangent, but it comes back together.
Yeah.
I promise. So I traveled across the country by myself with my dog, and my mom ended up shipping my machine to me. And in this world where I was kind of stuck, didn't know where I was going, didn't know what I was doing, because we were only in Georgia for a short time, but we didn't know how long of a time, because training varies at this point. After basic, it kind of varies, and the timelines on if he got into certain schools and stuff like that. So I got into quilting again as a creative outlet, something for my brain to do, my hands to do, and it really helped me make our little 1 bedroom white walled apartment feel more like a home, to have a colorful handmade quilt inside it. And I was able to, so she shipped me my machine and fabric, just like a random assortment of blue squares. And I didn't know what to do with it. So then she ended up shipping me a kit that I don't know if I had picked out or if she had picked out and started but never finished. One of us had picked it out, and we were together at that point. I think it was at a quilt shop or a quilt show. I can't really remember, but I love the colors. And so she shipped me that. So I finished it and I made my own version of the colors of it. It's the rainbow quilt that you can see a few pictures on my website and stuff, where if you see the rainbow quilt, that's the one I'm talking about. It's the first quilt I've ever made. It's not a rainbow per se, but it does have rainbow colors. It's so bright and colorful. And I made the top on a coffee table with my little brother sewing machine. And actually, and it was so wobbly. That machine was so wobbly. I had to stick a book underneath it to keep it steady. But I made the quilt, and she sent me all her extra tools, and I was able to quilt and make something and really get my creativity going again. It really helped get me out of that funk. But having her be really into long arming was amazing for me personally, because I could just ship my quilts and she would long arm them and ship them back. And I think she even, no, I think I bound the black one. So yeah, and sometimes she binds them for me, but usually she ships them back and I'll bind them. And that's been really handy. And especially getting into business and pattern design, where I had to be a little more quick on turnaround, and I could help her get more customers by having my quilts quilted by her. So I would send them back and she would do her thing and send them back.
It sounds like you have a really nice parallel interest, that you can do the quilt tops and she does the quilting, and if you're developing the patterns, that she is your featured long armor. So that's really nice that it creates a really good partnership.
Yeah. And like the business side was a little bit different though. Like she led me into quilting by just more of observation than anything else. And then she also inspired me to learn how to long arm. So I actually learned how to long arm on a machine in my local quilt shop at the last place we lived in Arizona. So easy sewing. For shout out to Emily. She lets you rent her long arm. It's amazing. So I learned how to do that out of inspiration from watching her. And then but the business side, she was more word of mouth. Send me your quilts, I'll do some longer quilting on them. And she started doing quilts for shows. She started winning awards, or the quilts that she quilted were winning awards for the quilting and things like that. And then she actually approached me about teaching, which was interesting because I dived into teaching workshops after doing some pattern design. I really wanted to teach. So that's where I really dived into. And so she approached me after a few years of teaching. I think this was like 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And I pulled her into the virtual space and virtual business and virtual classes. And I'm showing her the ropes, how to do it, how to set it up, how to get people to know about your services and things like that. So it's been kind of a fun um, pull and tug where she's full doing the quilting and encourages me. And then, but I had to figure it out on my own. And then I, in turn, can help her pull her business into the virtual space so that she's getting prepared for retirement now.
Mm-hmm.
So she can actually get out there and get more customers and stuff like that. So it's been fun. It's been interesting. And I know Andi, yours is a different story. I'd love to hear yours as well. How did your mom and you how do you guys work in this quilting industry and crafts?
Yeah, well, it sounds a little bit similar to you in that I did not learn to sew or quilt from my mom as a child, even though she was a wonderful seamstress and the sewing machine would come out on the weekends and she'd have her big, the cardboard folding, not cutting mat, but like measuring for garments, just, classic image from my childhood, and going to the fabric store and just, watching and helping her pick out the fabrics to make me a new summer outfit. But it was that personality clash kind of, between mothers and daughters. Sometimes you have that conflict going on. And so, there was never any pressure from my mom to start sewing. But as her retirement project, she partnered with a friend to open a fabric and yarn store. And I was an adult and we had a good relationship. So I was trying to help out in the store. And that's when I fell in love with quilting. And I was at a much better stage in life to take instruction from her. So she did help and teach me a lot of quilting, but then I took the step further to get a long arm and do some pattern design there. So our relationship now is much more on the let's be part of the same friendly sewing group, and we just kind of work in parallel there. She has inspired me to write patterns, and that we tend to fall back a little bit into the mom gives directions mode, because she's like, I have this idea for a pattern, Andi, why don't you just write it up? And so working on our second book, it definitely felt like she got to do the fun sewing part of it, and I was stuck behind the computer writing all the patterns. But similar in terms of teaching her how to do the social media stuff. She is much more a consumer of social media and just participates in groups and things online, and is not really active from a business perspective anymore because her quilt shop closed. She is just enjoying life, making scrappy quilts and doing her thing, and occasionally giving me ideas for my next patterns and classes. So it has definitely, the relationship has kind of gone on a little bit of a roller coaster ride in terms of how active she is in quilting as a business, but she definitely is a good inspiration and cheerleader for me these days.
Yeah, my mom too. I like to throw in that hashtag it's Andi's mom's fault.
Because she started me on this journey. So that is our little catchphrase. It's my mom's fault. We know that not everyone has a great relationship with their mom, so that anytime you do anything with family, there can be some pros and cons. Can you think of any one good thing, one bad thing that has come from working with your mom in the quilt space?
A good thing, I get first dibs on destashing. My mom is a huge Tula Pink fan. Now I'm not in love with Tula. She's amazing. I think she's an amazing designer. But her fabric isn't always up to my design aesthetic. That's a good way to put it. Because like the harsh contrast in her colors and the clarity, like the way she plays with clarity, like boggles my brain. And like sometimes it comes out like wonderful. Other times I'm like, whoa, that's way too much contrast for me, but it's beautiful. Anyway, so my mom is loves Tula Pink. So like when there's a fabric line that is coming out that I like, I'm like, hey mom, can you get a little extra? And then if she gets rid of some and I'm like, hey, I really liked that one. Can I take that one since you're destashing? Can I get first dibs on that? And she's like, yeah, you can have it. So having that first dibs on destash is definitely a pro, especially on tools too, because she'll also wear out some of her tools and be like, hey, I found this really cool one. Do you need any rotary cutters? Because I have like four I'm not using anymore. I'm like, yeah, I'll take this one.
I totally agree. I saw a meme recently about how even as an adult, um, anything at mom's house is fair game. You can just go in and help yourself. And that works the same way. I agree that especially with specialty rulers and things like that, if you're out shopping, my mom will always say, oh, don't buy that because I just got one, so we can share. I'll use it for my project and then you can try it out. So that's been a fun way to share the hobby.
So
um,
on the other side of that, though,
so
one
let's
of the downsides of sharing a hobby with your mom, is enabling. We enable each other. We spend way too much money on fabric sometimes when we're together, but we use it usually, eventually. Um, but going places, and I know I'm going to be spending money, so I know whenever I go quilt shopping with my mom, I need to make sure I have my budget in mind, so I'm not like overspending. But we do enable each other and encourage each other, so there it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd necessarily say that is a bad thing, but yes, you can go overboard a little bit when you have that person just say, "Oh, sure, yeah, I get that. It's beautiful."
I think that applies to like any quilting friend too, like being able to enable each other, but also encourage each other. So it's all
One of the mental challenges I have with working with my mom, I'm not going to say this is necessarily a negative, but it is definitely something I have to work on, is um, the seeking approval,
oh,
because you definitely can fall back into kind of that childhood perspective. And, mom should always approve. And, I'm bringing this to my mom because she's going to feed my ego. And if she doesn't like it, you can kind of spiral downwards. And so it can put a weird twist on things if you are trying to get your parents' approval for something and you're actually going to them for business advice. So you have to kind of separate that as a adult person, that, okay, maybe I need to ask my business questions to someone else, because I know that when I have this discussion with my mom, it's going to fall into that kind of mother-daughter relationship, and I'm not going to get a clear answer on this issue. But you can also frame that, when you have that conversation, hey, mom, I need your opinion as a quilt consumer,
yeah.
and frame the business conversation that way.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between with a hobby and having that hobby as a business to figure out personal versus business advice and the right people to talk to about those for your own mental clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah, especially now that my mom has really stepped away from being a business owner. Her years as a shop owner are in the past, and you know, times change. So even in just the short, 8 years since her shop closed, there have been big changes in the industry. So um, we need to keep that, but it's always helpful to get a wide range of opinions. So I certainly do go to her for advice and perspective, but you have to do your full market research. So ask your mom, ask your husband or wife or spouse, and get your friends' perspectives and then try to get some neutral customer perspectives as well when you are dealing with business.
A few more pros I came up with though, and I think you
Yes.
might agree with this one, is idea generation, like coming at like your mom telling you about her pattern ideas and you creating it.
That is definitely a plus. Is I get lots of ideas from my mom. The flip side, because there's always that pro and con, two sides to every issue. And if you aren't flooded with ideas on your own, having another person continually feed you ideas, it can feel like a burden, like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time as it is. Just please don't put any more on my plate, because then you have that guilt associated with it. Oh, I haven't finished this thing for my mom. And you just, that obviously there's only 24 hours in a day. You can only do what you can do, and you have to set some boundaries there.
Yeah, definitely. We should do a whole episode on boundaries. That might be a great episode. But yeah, that's definitely a boundary you need as a business owner to keep yourself on track and not get too distracted by the shiny object syndrome.
Yep. Yep.
I try to be mindful of that too. As you mentioned, you're a long arm. My mom's obviously, I shared, is my main long armor. So I try to be respectful of her timing too. And I try to give her a warning when I have like, because usually with pattern design and business, a lot of ideas come in the middle of the night. Things happen really quick. And you're like, hey, I have a new pattern. I'm working on it. Are you going to be free in like 3 weeks to quilt this top? And she's like, no. So I'm like, okay, let me extend my timeline and make sure that she has time to quilt it, because I do want her to be my quilter for the most part, because well, she does beautiful work, but also she's my mom and I want to support her. But yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're working with your mom, is to make sure that you have those boundaries and be respectful of their time and the project that they're giving you and things like that.
What else have you learned as either a benefit or a negative to working on quilts with your mom, Tori?
Well, this one I label more as a pro, but it can go both ways depending on opinions. But talking shop. So in the quilting industry, as an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of people we can really talk shop with. There's more and more as these
Mm-hmm.
groups rise, and I think this podcast is going to help others feel more open and talking about their business. But my mom has been in marketing, or not marketing exactly, but sales since she started working
Mm-hmm.
basically. So she has some great like in-person marketing tactics, and I don't even think she realizes their tactics because they're so ingrained in how she works with other people that I just like picked up on them. And then when I come to her with I'm working on this, she'll just have a few ideas and she'll just throw them out there, and I pick and choose which ones I think will work for me, because I am much more introverted than my mom. So like I'll pick and choose which ones I think will work. And but she is very encouraging to talk business to and just to get some ideas. I know we talked about idea
Mm-hmm.
generation just now, but specifically being able to talk about the quilting industry as a business with my mom has been really helpful, because at least it gives me someone to give feedback off of when I have like a new idea that I'm not too sure about, or I have a quilt pattern that I don't know if it's going to do very well. And I'm like, this is kind of an idea I'm working on. I'm not in love with it. How do you like it? And typically those I kind of step away from anyway. But it's great to be able to talk shop with her.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, my mom has stepped away from the business side of it. And um, unfortunately, her background was not in sales or anything business related as I was growing up. So we're both kind of figuring this out as we go. But I totally agree, when something happens in the quilt world, it's wonderful to have that ready partner, ready perspective, someone who truly gets it. Because, if some big issue comes up and I hear about it on Facebook, I would have to do so much more explaining to my husband to have a conversation about it. Whereas I can just call up and say, hey, mom, did you hear, the latest blah, blah, blah. And we can process our thoughts about the major controversies in the quilt world. Oh, I can't believe that person doesn't pre-wash.
That's a big controversy.
It can be,
Pre-wash
but
or not pre-wash.
yeah.
And just out of curiosity, are you team pre-wash or?
No, actually, I am not. And again, it's my mom's fault with the with the quilt shop. I would be working there on a Saturday. It may have been the height of summer that no one wants to go out and shop. And I'd be looking around and, hey, mom, can I grab that new line for a sample? And we just cut and start sewing. So that's my excuse for not being in the pre-wash habit. What about you?
Oh, I am totally not pre-wash. I throw so many color catchers in that I've yet to have a problem. The only time I realized that it would be good to have a larger seam allowance though is with flannel.
Mm.
I don't know if any other quilters have really noticed flannel tends to, or I'm sure many have noticed, I should say, but maybe not have said out loud that flannel and a 1/4 inch seam don't go well together. They need a
Mm.
larger seam, especially if you're getting um, lower cost flannel. That is
Very,
adorable.
very
Um, but
strategic terminology there.
yes, because I love lower cost flannel. Don't get me wrong. I love flannel all shapes and forms because I love soft stuff. And for when I was creating quilts or making quilts to sell them, when I originally started my business, I made flannel everything because I loved it so much. And I learned really quickly that the 1/4 inch seam isn't always large enough for flannel, and that one needs a little wider seam. Otherwise, I just cut and sew and wash with some color catchers and cold water, and everything turns out beautiful.
Good, good, good. So what techniques or advice have you gotten from your mom that you either religiously follow or totally disregard? Where are those similarities and differences with your mom?
Oh, I love that question. Completely disregard color because we have two different tastes in color. She loves to play with clarity, and clarity for me, and if anybody's wondering what that means, it's muddy fabrics versus clean fabrics. And it's great. It's okay to have muddy fabrics. It's not a bad thing. You don't want your kitchen floor to be muddy, but it's okay for your fabric. And what that means is you have a really, and I'm going to get a little technical here because I used to teach color, but muddy fabric is a pure hue mixed with gray or brown, and the more gray or brown you mix in, the more muddier it gets. So if you want to think of really muddy fabrics, you'll think like Civil War style fabrics, whereas clean pure hue is those really bright, like childlike colors where we associate with child toys that are really bright red, bright blue, bright green. um or even like neon, I would even say would be a very clean color. It has a little white mixed in there, really bright, but very bright. And I like clarity. I like to work with really muddied fabrics. I don't like to work with very clean fabrics, but they have to stay separated for me. Like I can't mix my muddy and my clean fabrics. They just my mind is just like, what? No, and my gut gets like nauseous,
Mm.
which is interesting. It's so
Yeah.
interesting to when I feel that gut nauseous. When I feel that nauseous feeling, I know what I'm looking at is an issue with clarity, but I have to figure out where the issue is on my
Mm.
fabric pool. So when I have all these fabrics lined up, I'm like, something's off. I can feel it in my gut. There's some clarity. Which one is too muddy? Which one is too clean? And I have to pull it
Mm.
out and replace it. Whereas my mom loves mixing clarity up. And like
Mm.
what she creates is beautiful. The end product of her quilts is beautiful. But when I first see like some of her fabric pools, I'm like, eh,
Yeah.
you sure? And she's like, yeah. And so that's a big one. Is like she sticks with her style of color choice, and I stick with my style of color choice. And sometimes we mix and give each other opinions, but usually we kind of stick with what we like, and it's almost, I wouldn't say polar opposite, but it is very different. But one thing that I've gone to and stuck with religiously are her. I love the way she thinks about quilting motifs, and it makes sense to my brain. And it's the best thing she's really taught, or the easiest thing she's taught me. Maybe not best is the right word, but it comes across easiest when she teaches what she knows and how her brain works. And my brain doesn't always work the same as my mom's. I just want to say, like, we are very different people. And like the way she explains it, I get it and it sticks in my head. Like one of her quilting motifs, she calls the worm. And like I've seen it before and I never liked it. But when she showed it to me and how she uses it and why she uses it, and she showed me a few examples of how she used it, I was like, that's a really cool motif. And now I know how to do it because she called it the worm. Like most quilters, free motion quilters that I've seen don't call it the same name. Like there's no generic name for all these quilting motifs for the most part. There are a few, like meander is one that everybody knows. But there are a few that they have different names. And my mom calls this one the worm, where it almost looks like wood grain, but not
Mm.
quite. It's a little different. And she uses it a lot in borders or in backgrounds and stuff like that. But it comes out like with this amazing movement that just looks awesome. So that's one thing that I run with is if I want to learn a specific quilting motif for my domestic machine now, or when I was learning the long arm, I would go to her and she would draw it for me. And then I would I would sketch it out and I would take my notebook and I'd go to the quilt, 1,000 miles away and I would practice until I liked it. And, what's interesting too is that I was able to create my own feel for it too. So my quilting doesn't look like my mom's quilting, but it is inspired by her brain work, for lack of, or her methodology, her strategy, and how she starts and ends. And yeah, I've analyzed it a little bit before. It might sound
Mm-hmm.
a little nerdy because I'm a little nerdy. I like to dive in and analyze why I think the way I do and how she thinks the way she does and how well I'm kind of like that with everybody. I'm like, how did you figure that out? I really like metacognition. How did
Mm-hmm.
thinking about your thinking? And yeah, I get kind of nerdy with it.
Yep.
But
Yep.
anyway, Andi, long answer, short. Quilting motifs is something I always go to her with, and color is what I kind of stay away. Like her opinion matters, but if I love it, I'm sticking with it because
Yeah.
I know her color choices are different than mine. So
Mm-hmm.
what are yours, Andi?
I think my mom and I are more similar on color. We both really, really love Cape Facet, bold, bright designs, and just really fun um, modern quilting fabrics versus, like you said, some of the old Civil War reproductions and that kind of stuff. While it's beautiful, those are not the first choice for either one of us. So that's been fun. We can always rate each other's stash for fabrics, and fabric shopping together is a lot of fun. One of the big differences in our quilting styles is the techniques that we use, because I am much more a straight piecer. Just give me the two fabrics and let me put together some classic quilt blocks. Whereas my mom loves applique, and she has made a bunch of applique quilts. And I have shared on other episodes that me and the A word do not go together. So it's kind of fun. If you look through our first monochromatic quilt book, you can definitely see most of the simple designs are the ones I came up with. All the applique is from her brain. So
I love that, the A word. Don't
yeah,
talk to me about the A word.
yeah, yeah. So I think we have covered quite a bit about the ups and downs of quilting with your mom. It's wonderful to share this hobby with our generations that can come before us, and hopefully we can both pass this along to our daughters as well.
Yes. And we will be we are inviting our moms to come on our podcast so you can hear straight from them and know that they hear this and we know they're going to hear it. And we love you, Mom. And it's your fault.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this love of quilting with us. And yeah, definitely. Even though I say it's your fault, that's said with love, and I'm glad that you have shared this with me. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.